Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we're all together for the final class before Shavuot. And tonight is a very special night. Tonight is the last night of Sfirat Omer. And Sfirat Omer is a time of very intense self-work, a time of a lot of introspection and reflection, a time of really trying to find out who you are and trying to bring that into reality, and facing many obstacles that come along the way and trying to do that. So what I want to do first is I just want to dedicate this class to my mother. She's here tonight for the class. Her name is Sherry, if everyone can see her in that video. So a lot of people don't know this, but the Jewish concept of a king is actually female. And kingship in general within Judaism is a female quality, to be a king. And this is the reason why David is the king of Israel, because he actually has a female soul. So even though he was the king, and you might say to yourself, yeah, but the king was not female, he was male, so in truth he really was female. So tonight is Malchut of Malchut. That means the kingship of kingship. This is the last day of the Sfirat Omer, and this is the full revelation of the soul prior to tomorrow night, when it's Shavuot and we receive the Torah anew like we never did before. My mother's Hebrew name is Shoshana, and it means a rose. And while that sounds very beautiful, and it is, the Torah describes the Jewish people as Shoshana. The whole Jewish people is called Shoshana because they are beautiful like a rose, but that a rose, it grows between thorns. And when Moshe Rabbeinu and Moses was told by Hashem to take his people out of slavery, out of Egypt, sorry, one second. Sorry about that. So Moshe had left Egypt a long time before that. And Hashem told Moshe to go back and save his brothers and sisters. And the imagery that was shown in the Torah is that Hashem appeared within a bush. It was a thorn bush. And the rabbis all wonder why in the most important moment in history, really, that Hashem is revealing himself to the Redeemer of the Jewish people, he does it in a thorn bush. And one of the answers that they give in the Midrash is the reason is because Hashem was telling Moshe that I'm with them in Egypt, meaning the Jewish people are suffering in slavery and you left to go find me, but I'm not out there. I'm with them in Egypt, suffering with them. And that's why he appeared in a thorn bush, because he was trying to say that despite the fact that it would look like the best way to find me is to go up on a mountain and to meditate or to disconnect from the world, Hashem was telling Moshe that, that just like the Jewish people are suffering in psychological and emotional and mental slavery, I'm with them. I'm not out anywhere else. So if you want to find me, you're going to have to go back and save your brothers and sisters, because then you'll find me. And this is the rose amongst thorns. In Shir Shirim, which we know is the holiest book in the entire Torah, which Shlomo Melech, David's son, wrote, and it sounds like a love song, actually. And it speaks about the Jewish people as a rose, as a Shoshana. And even though everybody wants to be a rose, because everybody wants to be beautiful, nobody really understands that to do so, you must grow amongst thorns. And that can often be very painful. I've gotten a lot from my mother. My mother is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, the only one who survived from his family. And she was the final child who was born from them. And she had to grow up, and she had to grow up very quick. And she had to become very tough very early on in her life in order to survive someone who survived. And even though we often speak about the survivors in a very, very beautiful light, and it's true that they are incredible, and we should cherish every moment that we have with them in their memory, most people don't speak about the fact that many of them came out of the camps very traumatized. And that poured out into their families after they started again. So even as a young child, my mother was a rose amongst thorns, and that continued on and on as she got older. And she had her own family, and she got married to my father, and had me and my brother. And, that even though the thorns were prickling stronger and stronger, she was growing more and more beautiful. And still to this day, she gives me a tremendous amount of strength, and she's been with me in everything in my life. And no matter how dark things have gotten, she's never left my side. And she's taught me how to be strong. And for that, I love her forever. And that's what it means to be a king. It doesn't mean to rule with power or authority. It means to actually be strong, to grow up amongst thorns, and to still care about people, and to self-sacrifice for everybody around you. And that the suffering itself makes you very beautiful, and then you become like a rose. So anyway, this class is dedicated to her. I want to tell you guys a story. Rabbi Nachman, even though we often speak about his wisdom, he actually wrote stories, and they sound like children's stories, but they're actually very deep, and they're very beautiful. In fact, it's me. The story I'm going to tell you now is my son and my favorite story, which is funny because we're 30 years apart. But we both have the same favorite story, and every day I read it to him because he asked me to. And the truth is, I like reading it just as much as he does, and I get just as much encouragement as he does. And I actually wish he could say it to you because he knows this story better than me, even though he's 3. So I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to try and give it over to you. It's such a beautiful story. It's not long, but it is very beautiful. So please listen to the story, and I hope you'll see as I start to speak about Shavuot why I'm telling you this story, okay? The story is called The Lost Princess. Rabbi Nachman wrote many stories in the last few years of his life, but this was the first one. And Rabbi Nachman used to go all around Ukraine in Eastern Europe and tell people this story. And whether they were old or they were young or they were religious or they were secular, everyone was moved by this story. And everybody wanted to come closer to whoever they really were. And this is the story. There was once a king who had 6 sons and 1 daughter. And even though he had 6 sons and he loved them, he loved his daughter the most. That was his youngest, that was his baby daughter. And he cherished her, and he spent the most time with her, and he really, really loved her. He really connected to her, and he loved spending time with her. One day while they were together, they got into a big fight. And the father, the king, said that the evil one should take you away, the bad one should take you away, because he was angry, but he didn't really mean it. But what happened after that is she actually disappeared. And when everybody came the next day and the king came to go console her and to tell her that he was sorry about what had happened and he didn't mean it, his daughter wasn't there anymore. So he was very distressed. And all of his servants and all of the people who were in his kingdom came over to try and help him and to console him, and he couldn't be consoled because he loved his daughter so much and he didn't know where she was. So he had a viceroy. This was the person who was second in command to him, who loved his king and couldn't see his king in pain like this anymore. And he said, don't worry, I'm going to go find her. I just need you to give me some money, and I need you to give me a horse and a servant, and I'm going to look for her. No matter how long it takes, I'm going to find her. I'm going to bring her back to you. So he went. And this is the story of his adventures. So on his journey, this viceroy, he traveled through deserts and fields and forests, and he searched for a very long time. Finally, while traveling through the desert, he came upon a narrow path leading from the main road. So he was going in all of these places that he was hoping she would be, in the desert, in the mountains, in all of these different places, but he couldn't find her, and he was frustrated. So he decided to try something different. He saw an unusual path that went off on the side. He said, I've traveled so long in the desert, maybe I should just try and go down this path and see where it takes me. And he finally found a very beautiful castle that was surrounded by many soldiers, and he wanted to go inside the castle. He thought maybe she's there. But he was scared that maybe the soldiers weren't going to let him in. They were going to ask him who he was, what he was doing there. And he found, to his surprise, nobody said anything to him. They just let him walk into the castle. So he walks in, and he sees there's a huge party going on. A lot of food, a lot of music, a lot of drinks. And there was a king in that castle, a different king. And he had a big throne. And he was having a huge festival, a huge party. And this viceroy who walked in, he didn't know what was going on, but he was taken aback by how beautiful it was, how much music there was, how much food there was. And he just watched. And he saw all of a sudden that the king asked for the queen. He wanted his queen to come out. And the whole kingdom came up in an uproar. And all of a sudden, there was a throne that was placed next to his throne for the queen. And this viceroy is watching. And all of a sudden, the queen came in. And the queen was the lost princess. That somehow she ended up in this place, married to this king. And she locked eyes with him. And she came over to him. And she told him, "Do you recognize me?" He said, "Yes, of course I recognize you. You're the king's daughter. How did you get here?" So she said, "My father got very mad at me, and he told me to go away. And they took me away. Someone took me away, and I ended up in this place, and it's a very bad place. And this king that I'm married to is a very bad person, and I can't leave here. I'm trapped here." So so the viceroy said, "Is there any way I can get you out of here?" So she said, "Yes, there's one way you can get me out. If you stay here for 1 year, and you fast, and you don't sleep for 1 year. Every day you fast a little bit and you don't sleep, and you pick one spot for the whole year. And in that spot, you simply yearn for me every single day to take me out. If you do that for 1 year, and on the very last day, you don't eat anything, and you don't drink anything, and you don't sleep, you'll be able to take me out." So he said, "Of course, I'm going to." So he goes and he does it. And every day he goes to the same place and he's crying that he should be able to take her out because he's following her instructions. He's not eating and he's barely sleeping. And finally, the last day comes and he doesn't eat and he doesn't sleep. And he's walking back to the castle to take her out. And all of a sudden, he sees a beautiful apple tree. And he never saw an apple tree like this before. So he's like, "This is so interesting. Look how beautiful these apples are." And he picks off the apple, and he was just overcome by how delicious they looked. And he ate the apple right before he got to the castle. And he fell asleep. So he actually fell asleep for a very long time. And his servant who was with him was waiting and trying to wake him up, and he couldn't wake up. So he was staying by him. And it was actually a few years before he woke up. And finally he woke up. And he told him, and the viceroy said, what happened to me? Where am I?" So his servant told him the whole story, that the king sent the daughter away, and we came to go get her, and we've been traveling for years. You are on the last day before you were going to take her out. You ate from a tree, and you fell asleep, but now you've been asleep for years, and I can't wake you up. And that's what happened. So he was so distraught. He couldn't believe how he messed this whole thing up. And he was afraid that she was no longer in the castle anymore. So he starts to run over to the castle. And he sees that the princess is still there. And he was relieved. But the princess was crying. And she said to him, "What happened to you? I've been waiting all year for you to take me out. And you didn't. What happened?" So she said, "I saw you ate from the tree and you fell asleep. You must have fell asleep." So listen, don't feel bad, because the truth is, even though I want to leave desperately, and even though you tried so hard, it's very hard on the last day not to eat and not to fall asleep. So he said, "Can I still get you out?" She said, "Yes, there's a way to get me out. You have to stay 1 more year and do the same exact thing I told you the first time. But this time, you can eat, you just can't sleep." So now it's less difficult. First time he couldn't eat and he couldn't sleep. And he ate and fell asleep. So this time he says, "You can eat, but please just don't fall asleep. And in order not to fall asleep, I highly suggest you don't drink any wine because it makes you tired." So he said, okay. And he did the same thing for a year. Every single day, he kept going back to that spot and crying and crying and crying to take out the princess. And on the last day, he's walking back to the castle. And he sees a river. And the river was unusual because it was red. And he said to his servant, "I don't understand. What is this river? This river is red, even though it's supposed to be water. This is so weird." So thinking it was water, even though it was red, he took a sip to see what it was. And it was actually a river of wine. So he got tired and he fell asleep. So this time, though, he didn't fall asleep for a few years. He fell asleep for 70 years. And he woke up and he was very, very old and very gray. And he said to the servant, "What happened to me?" And he saw how old the servant was and he saw how old he was. And he said, "What happened to me?" He said, told him the whole story again. And he said, "This time, the last day, we're about to go back and you drank from this river because you thought it was interesting. And then you ate and you fell asleep for 70 years. And now we're here." So he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that he failed again. And on the last day, he dropped the ball. And he was so close. And he toiled this whole year to do this and gave everything he had. And still he fell asleep. So he went to go back to see if the princess was there. But in fact, the princess was gone. And when he woke up, there was a scarf that was left for him. And the scarf was left by the princess for him. And she said, "What's the scarf?" So the servant said, "The princess actually left. And I saw her. She came by with a whole procession of people with the king. And she was traveling to another place. They were taking her out of the castle. And she saw you. And she was crying over you. And she said, I can't believe you fell asleep again. You worked so hard and I've been waiting for so long to go back home. And now I can't go back home." So in her distress, she took her scarf off and she was just crying and crying on it. And it ended up forming letters on the scarf. So when he woke up and he saw the scarf, he held the scarf up to the sun. And the scarf said that I'm on the Golden Mountain in the Pearl Castle. That's where I'm going to be from now on. I'm not going to be in that castle that you saw me in. I'm going to be in the Golden Mountain in the Pearl Castle as well.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. All right. I will.
Sorry. So, yes. So there was a mountain in a pearl castle. So all of a sudden, he starts to search. And he's just going and going and going, but he leaves behind his servant. So now he's all alone. So in the beginning, he had a horse and a servant, and he lost his horse. And now he lost his servant, and he's literally all by himself. And he's going through deserts, and he's going through mountains, and he's trying to find her for years. And he finally sees a giant. And this giant had a huge tree on its back. And the giant came over to him, and the viceroy told him the whole story. This is what happened to me. I was with the king, and now I'm here. I've been looking for the princess for years, and she's on this golden mountain in this pearl castle. And he said, "Ha ha ha! There's no such thing. I've been living here my whole life. There is no golden mountain in pearl castle." So Yosef started crying, and he said, "I don't believe it. I know that there is. I know that there is a golden mountain and a pearl castle. The princess is there, and I need to find her, and I know she's there. And he's crying and crying. And he said, you know what, even though this is complete foolishness, whoever told you this, I'm so sorry that you've been toiling your whole life to find this. It's not real. But just to make you feel better about it, I actually control all the animals in the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all the animals here. They travel all over the world. If there really is a golden mountain and a pearl castle, they're going to know about it. So I'll ask them. So the animals all gather around, and the giant asked the animals, have you ever seen a golden mountain and a pearl castle? And they said, no, we have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, you see, there is no such thing. You need to go home. You're wasting your time. And Yosef just started crying and crying and crying. And he re-strengthened himself. He said, I know that there's a golden mountain and a pearl castle. I know there is. And he said, listen, if you're that headstrong and you're not going to give up, I'll tell you, the giant said, I have a brother. And he's actually in control of all the birds of the world. So the birds actually can see more than the animals can see because they fly. So therefore they can see more of what's going on. And if anybody knows about the fact that there is such a golden mountain pearl castle, they would know. So Yosef starts traveling, and he's traveling again for years and years trying to find this friend. And he finally finds a giant who's his brother, who's also carrying a very big tree on his back. And he tells him the whole story from the beginning of everything that happened. And he said, ha, fool, there's no golden mountain and pearl castle. I've been here my whole life. There's no such thing. And Yosef started crying. The viceroy started crying and crying and crying. He said, it can't be. There must be. I haven't done this my whole life for nothing. There is such a thing. I know that there is. And he said, you know what? If you're that headstrong, if you're that stubborn, I control all the birds in the world. Let me get them all here. If anybody would know that there is such a thing, they would know. He brings all the birds in the world to him. And he asked them, have you ever heard of a golden mountain and pearl castle? They said, no, we never heard of one. So he said, you fool, you see? Go home. There's no such thing. You're looking and you're looking and you're trying and you're trying and you're hitting your head against the wall over and over and over again. And I feel very bad for you, but there is no such thing. Go home. And he starts crying and crying and crying. And he said, I don't believe it. I know that there's a golden mountain and pearl castle. I know the princess is there. He said, listen, if you're going to be so stubborn, I'll tell you, I have one more brother. He's also a giant. And he's in control of all the wind in the world. And the wind goes everywhere. Even though all the animals are traveling on the ground, they can see what's on the ground. And even though the birds are in the sky, they can see what's in the sky. The wind literally goes everywhere. And if there is such a golden mountain and pearl castle, they'll know about it. And if not, you need to go home. So he goes and he travels for another year, another year, another year, and he finally finds the golden mountain. He finally finds the giant. And the giant has the tree on his back. And he says to the giant the whole story from the beginning. He tells him everything that happened to him. And he said, you fool, there's no such thing. There is no golden mountain and pearl castle. And Yosef starts crying and crying and crying. He said, it can't be that. I know that there is. I know that there is. And he's just completely demoralized. He's laying on the floor and crying. He just feels completely stuck and overwhelmed and he just can't believe it. He can't believe he did all of this for nothing. And the giant said to him, you know what? If you're going to be that stubborn, I have wind that I control. I'm going to bring all the wind to me. And I'm telling you right now, if anyone knows about it, it's them. So let's see what they say. Maybe they know about it. The wind comes, and he asked the wind, is there any such golden mountain in pearl castle? So they said, no, we never heard of it. And Yosef just starts crying and crying because he saw all the brothers. He saw all the giants. He couldn't believe it. He just sits there crying and crying. And he's contemplating his whole life that he went totally against what was normal, that he went completely against what would have been a good life on paper to go find this lost princess that he so desperately wanted to bring back to the king. And he can't find her. And finally, there was one wind that came that didn't come before. Even though he had gathered all the wind, there was one more gust of wind that came. And this giant got so mad. He said, "Where were you? I already gathered all the wind. Why are you coming late?" He said, "I'm so sorry. I was delayed. I was actually carrying a princess to a golden mountain in a pearl castle." So Yosef starts crying from happiness. As my son would say, a happy cry. And he said, "You see, I knew that there was a golden mountain in a pearl castle. I know it exists. I knew it was there." So now the giant was intrigued, and he said to the wind, what's it like over there? What's valuable over there? So the wind said, "It's crazy. Everything is valuable over there." So he said to the wind, "Listen, I want you to take the viceroy, and to, just like you took the princess there, I want you to take the viceroy there and show him where it is." And he told the viceroy, "Listen to me. You don't have any money, and the place that you're going, everything is valuable. So therefore, you're going to need a lot of money. So I'm giving you a pouch with money in it, and good luck." So the wind picks him up, and he flies on the wind, and he gets to a gigantic gate. As he gets off, he goes to the gate. They don't let him in. They said, "There's no way you're getting in here." So he remembered that the giant gave him this giant pouch with money in it. So he took it out, and he gave it to the guards, and they let him in. He walks in, and he sees a beautiful, gigantic golden mountain and pearl castle. Rabbi Nachman didn't reveal the story. And he said that if I were to tell you the end of the story, then you would know how the Mashiach comes and brings redemption to the world. So you're just going to have to wait and find out. Anyone who heard this story knows that the viceroy is every single one of us. That they are that rose that has been traveling amongst thorns for many, many years and trying to look for something: happiness, peace, security, state of mind, fulfilling your dreams. Everyone's been looking for something. That's the lost princess. And constantly we're confronted with what looks like the reality that there is no such thing. And as the journey goes longer and longer, and you think it's going to get easier at some point, it actually is getting harder and harder. And those who are around you are actually making it difficult for you to find your lost princess. And you don't feel like it's ever going to end, but you don't give up because you just know she's there. And you don't know how to get to her, and you don't know how to find her, and you don't even know what she looks like maybe, but you know she exists. Shavuot is coming up tomorrow night. Shavuot is the night that we receive the Torah for the first time. The commentary on this story actually says that the lost princess is the Torah. That the thing that everybody's looking for is the Torah. Because the Torah is what brings a person peace, and what brings a person faith, and what brings a person happiness and joy and connection. What brings a person tranquility and wholeness in his life. And yet you just don't know where it is, and you don't know what it looks like, and you may not even know it's the Torah. And the Jewish people, for 49 days, were traveling in the desert. They left Egypt on Pesach, on Passover, which was an amazing experience, which parallels the beginning of the story, when the princess was at home with the king, and the viceroy was there as well, and everybody was happy. That's Pesach. It's an incredible feeling. You're free. Everything's going great. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, things start to look like they completely fall apart. And you have to go and try and pick up the pieces. And that represents these 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot. They're called Sirat HaOmer. That's what we've been doing now for 49 days. And then Shavuot comes. And the truth is that according to Kabbalah, these days of the Omer, the 49 days that you're looking, so to speak, for the lost princess, that represents your life in this world. That prior to your being here, your soul was above, and you saw that Hashem lost his princess. And you told Hashem that you wanted to come down here and to find it for him. But when you came down here, you completely forgot why you were here. And you completely forgot how to get there. And you're constantly looking for something, and you don't know what. And these 49 days in the desert are the 49 years, or so to speak, experiences that you have here in this world. That's the whole desert. And only at the very end, which represents Shavuot, when Mashiach comes, when Moses comes down from the mountain, and he has the Torah in his hand, and the mountain is the golden mountain, and the Torah is in an ark. It's actually in an aron, and that ark is the pearl. It's the pearl building. It's the pearl castle. And the Jews realize that everything that they did was not in vain. That even though they suffered tremendously in that desert, and they didn't understand why they were there, and they were constantly confused and angry and sad, and just barely getting by every single day. And then all of a sudden, Moshe comes down the mountain, and he brings them what they were working for their whole life. And we know that there was tremendous happiness on that day. Tremendous, tremendous happiness. It says that when we got the Torah, that Hashem gave crowns to every single Jewish man, every Jewish woman received crowns. And Rabbi Nachman says those crowns were of simcha, happiness. That for the first time they got to experience real happiness in their life, when they got to see the fruit of all of their labor. Rabbi Nachman often says that when a person suffers in his life, he doesn't realize he often just has to wait. That despite our grinding and clawing to try and get an answer now and to try and figure it out, or to resist what's happening to you, when in fact, just like the Torah scroll, you don't know how it's good until the end. And this is really life, that you're not going to understand until the end. And then you'll see it was all worth it. Everything that you went through, all of the struggle, all of the hardship, and you'll see that that was actually the whole key to receiving and to experiencing the lost princess. Shavuot is actually my favorite holiday. And even though it's not the most meaningful holiday to me, it is my favorite holiday. And on Shavuot, you get to eat and drink and learn and spend time with your family. And it's so beautiful. And it's such a happy day. And Rabbi Nachman and his followers, they didn't just learn the Torah all night, which they say you're supposed to stay up all night and to receive the Torah like you received it thousands of years ago, to see the lost princess again. But they used to dance. Like in between everything they learned, they would dance and they would sing, and they go back to learning and going dancing and singing and going back to learning. Because it's just such happiness on that day. And actually, King David was born on that day. He was born on Shavuot. And in fact, he's one of the few people in history that died on the same day he was born. So King David was born on Shavuot, and he passed away on Shavuot. So we know that David represents Malchut, what we spoke about in the beginning, kingship, the concept of female royalty, and that the king of the Jewish people has a female soul, David. And that David is born on Shavuot, and he passed away on Shavuot. So what's the connection between David and this holiday? And the answer is that that's why David is sent here, is to find the lost princess. And therefore, he's born on that day, because that's why he's born into the world. And that's why he passed away on that day, because he accomplished what he came here for. And for every single person who's listening right now, I've received many emails and many phone calls from a lot of the women who are struggling tremendously, and for good reason. And I want to give you a great answer that's going to make you feel really good, and it's going to lift you up, and it's going to inspire you. But Rabbi Nachman says the truth is sometimes you just have to wait. And it's so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that. But the truth is that Hashem, everything he does is for the best. And there's no way to experience that until you get to the end. Because the Torah, just like life, is a scroll. There's a beginning of the scroll, there's an end of the scroll. If you just read the middle of the Torah, so it doesn't look good. And if you just read the beginning of the Torah, it doesn't look good. But if you read from the beginning until the end, you see how good it is, how sweet it is, how beautiful it is, how much better it is than anything you could have possibly imagined. And for everyone who's here, just to know you're not alone. And no matter what you're going through with your friends or your family, no matter what you've been through in your life, you're not alone. And every single one of us is that viceroy who's looking for that lost princess in their own way, who's going through mountains and deserts and forests and seemingly coming up empty over and over and over again. When in fact, in the end, you're going to see that this was actually the most precious thing that there was. And part of the reason we don't feel that is because we don't know. Because we don't know. And like we've spoken about in the past, this world is actually not for knowing. This world is for believing. That in the future, the time when Moshe is going to come down with the Torah, and this world ends, and we move into the next world, when we're going to be able to experience why we had to go through everything, then you're going to know. And then you're going to be very happy. But right now, the only way to be happy is through believing. Because it's impossible to know right now, because we're in the middle of the Torah. And there's no way to know the end of the Torah while you're in the middle. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a sweet story. And there's a reason why it's called history, because this is really his story. This is Hashem's story. And he gave every single one of us a very important role to play in that story, to find his daughter and to bring it back to him. And even though the Torah says that you learned, every single man, every single woman learned and knows everything before he comes into this world, and then as soon as he's born, he forgets all of it. And that's the source of his confusion. At the same time, there's something you can do here now that you couldn't do before when you knew everything. And that's belief. And that's so much sweeter. That is so much sweeter. Because, okay, so let's say a person like he is being told all the time what to do. And like for instance, we know that Noah, Hashem always told him, do this and do that, do this and do that. And that's how you're going to find me. But then Abraham came, who was the first Jew, Abraham. And the Torah says Hashem never told him, go do this and go do that, go do that. He actually let Abraham go in front. And he didn't tell him explicitly what to do all the time. He let Abraham find him. And what was the reason? Because in a way that we can't understand, he loved Abraham more. And because he loved him more, he wanted to give him the experience of looking without knowing. Because to believe in something as strong as knowing something is even sweeter than knowing the thing itself. When a parent loves a child, there's no reason that he knows that he loves him. He just loves him. It's a belief. And no matter what that child does, that child can't change their parent's mind. That parent is always going to love his child. Because the belief is stronger than what they know. Because if it's based on what they know, then at the moment that the child is acting out, is lashing out, is cursing the parent out, is leaving the home, is doing all the things that the parent didn't raise them to do. So if it's based only on what you know, so you give up on your child because you see it's not working out. But you never do. Why not? Because you believe in them. Because you believe that they're going to get better. Because you believe they're going to find their way. Because you believe that they're good. And that belief, according to Kabbalah, is stronger than truth. Like we've spoken about many times in the end, that what Mashiach is going to reveal is that the female dimension of the soul is even stronger than the male dimension. That faith is even greater than truth. And for 49 days in the desert, we're building and we're learning how to have faith. And often we resist these moments in our life and we try and know. And that's why we're suffering tremendously, because we're always trying to know. But this is not the time for knowing. This is the time for believing. For believing that in the end, everything is going to be good. And I'm going to find my lost princess and doing whatever I can to do that. And at the very end, then you're going to know. And you're going to see, in fact, that believing was even higher than knowing. And we're going to be able to thank Hashem that he lost his princess and that we were compelled to be sent down here to try and find her and bring her back up, because it's really all for us. The sages teach that the only reason Hashem created the world and created your life and everything that happens from the beginning into the end is only in order to give you all of the good. But the place of that good is not here. And that's why we're suffering. This is an alleyway. The sages say this is a corridor. It's like when you go to a wedding, an amazing wedding. You get all dressed up and it's so sweet. And you put on your makeup and you put on your nice clothes for the first time in months. You listen to your favorite music and you're so excited to finally leave your house and to go out with your husband. And now you're going to the hall and all of a sudden you're putting your coat in the coat room. And all of a sudden you get stuck in the coat room. And you're saying to yourself, why aren't I happy here? Why aren't I happy in the coat room? And the answer is because you're not in the wedding. You're still stuck in the coat room. You need to go to the coat room, take off your coat to get to the wedding, but this is not the place that you're going to enjoy the wedding. That's then. This is now. Now is the time for you to trust me and to give me your coat. And at the end, I'll give you your coat back and you'll see why it was good for you. So this is my long way of trying to say to keep going, and not to resist life, but to believe in good and only look for the good and only follow the good, because it's the only thing that's real. There's nothing else that's real. And even if you see a giant who tells you to give up because there's no such thing, like every Baal Tshuva who's watching this, who has been told by many people, God doesn't exist, and you joined the cult, and you lost your mind, to know she does exist, the princess does exist, and no matter how many giants you're confronted with, and usually those giants are really mostly in your own mind, the main thing, like the Viceroy, is just no matter how many times you're crying, and no matter how many times you fall down, that you don't give up. And in the end, like tomorrow night, we're going to have Shavuot. And like at the end of your life, you're going to have Shavuot, when Hashem is going to reveal to you why everything had to happen to you like it happened to you, and how through what you did, you brought so much beauty and blessing and truth and happiness and peace, not just to yourself, not just to the Jewish people, but to the whole world. And not even just to the whole world, but to your parents and your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents who are all up above, who are looking over you, who are praying for you every day, who can't wait to see you again. You know, I was told when I went to go see, I was in Israel a few years ago, and I was told to go see someone, his name was the Be'ala Rebbe. He's a very big tzaddik. The Biala Rebbe is a different form of Chassidus than Breslov, also very beautiful. And I was told to go speak to him. I had an amazing conversation with him. And I told him about my whole journey. He was listening, and he told me, David, you should know, you have a grandmother who's been praying for you for a very long time, that you should find your princess, that you should find your way back. And that's the only reason that you ever realize that Hashem exists, that you have a great-grandmother who's been praying for you for a very, very long time. Mother, he didn't say one of your grandparents. There's an aspect of a woman that doesn't give up. There's an aspect of every Jew that never gives up. There's a part of Mashiach that no matter what happens to him, he never gives up. And that's what wins in the end. And even though it's amongst thorns, and those thorns are on fire, and it's burning, and it's so hard, that those thorns and that thorn bush is never consumed by that fire. And that was what Hashem was telling Moshe. My people is where I am, because they're the strongest people in the world, and they're the most beautiful people in the world, and they're going to go through everything, and they're going to get through everything. And no matter how much that thorn bush is on fire, it's never going to be consumed. So please go to them and take them out, because then you're going to find me. Then you're going to find the lost princess. I'm with them. Does anybody have any questions from tonight's lesson? Or about Shavuot tomorrow night? And if you don't feel comfortable asking, you can type it in. If you don't want to show your face, you also don't have to. I'll say something very quick about Shavuot tomorrow, about a way to experience the day. The main thing is to be really, really happy. As the women who are here, you guys are the foundations of your home. You already know that. You know that when you guys are good, your family's good. You know that when you guys are not good, your family is a mess. And you are the rocks. You are the foundations, not just of your family, but of the world. And like the rabbis teach, the redemption depends on you. So part of the way is because you guys believe no matter what, that no matter what it looks like with the people around you, no matter what they're going through, that because you never give up, everyone makes it in the end. So tomorrow night is the night when you stop struggling, when you forget about all of it, when you forget about all of the deserts and the mountains and the thorns that you have had to go through, and that you just get to experience all the blessing as a result, all of the good, and not to worry about anything, just to be happy. So that's my best advice for you. Rabbi Nachman stressed all the time you should be very happy. On Shavuot, he said you should be really, really, really happy. Singing and dancing happy. Because in truth, this is a window into what's to come at the end of your life. That you're going to be able to see in the end it was all worth it. And that the lost princess is simply in the Golden Mountain and the Pearl Castle. And she's not in the coat room. But you need to go through the coat room to get to the wedding hall. So this is what I would suggest to everybody. Tomorrow night, light those candles and enjoy the night. And no matter what happens, just be happy and don't worry about anything. Hashem loves that more than anything. The Baal Shem Tov taught, Rabbi Nachman taught, that what makes Hashem happier than anything is when his children are happy. And despite what you might perceive in life, that, whether you've seen religious people before, or people are quote unquote religious, that they dress a certain way or they look a certain way, and because they're not happy, you think it means that Hashem doesn't want me to be happy. It's not true. The Torah says something and people do what they want with it. But the Torah says very clearly you should be happy. That Hashem loves when you're happy. So happiness is the key to all blessing. Happiness is the key to all growth. Happiness is the key to peace. So for Shavuot, these 2 days, if you're outside of the land of Israel, or the 1 day if you're in the land of Israel, forget about everything and just enjoy the day and just be happy. and you'll have a taste of what's to come at the end for you. Any questions before we sign off together? Looks like there's a question on the bottom here. I have not missed any of your lectures. Every time you give a lecture, I feel you are speaking to me. Every time I want to give up, your lectures keep me going. Thank you so much for your time. That helps us. Thank you. Don't give up on anything. I'm telling you, don't give up on anything. I haven't given up on anything my whole life. And it's been so hard. It's been so hard. But it's so sweet. It's so sweet. And you're not alone. And there's people who have done this before, and there's people who are doing it now. And we are all going to get through this. And you are going to see that Hashem is good. And you're going to see that everything was good. But you have to believe in yourself. And you have to go all the way. Because otherwise you don't get to see the golden mountain of the Procast.
Rabbi, question. Is it similar? Is it similar, the whole entire story and the whole entire situation worldwide, and the way the Torah teaches us that if you take a seed and you plant a seed, the first thing what happens to the seed, it gets rotten. It gets rotten. The hardship. It's hard. It's very difficult, and it even goes to the point that it smells. And then all of a sudden, there is a beautiful flower, beautiful thing starts growing and growing. But when we see the seed that it's getting rotten, you say you're looking, it's physically getting rotten. You say, what's going on? It smells getting rotten, and it's really, you could see something getting rotten, but then all of a sudden something beautiful comes out of it. Isn't it the same view of our lives and what's happening today in the world?
It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. The reason why she's called Shoshana, why the Jewish people are called the rose, is because that's how the rose is born. It's born as a seed, and it decomposes, and it does rot to the point of almost self-extinction. And at the moment that it looks like it's not going to go any longer, just like the Viceroy, at the moment that it looked like he was done, a beautiful flower shot out. And I'll tell you that while on this journey and going through deserts and mountains and all of the other things, after I became Al Tshuva, and really the only thing that was keeping me going was Rabbi Nachman's teachings. And I was just praying every day that he should show me that he's good, not just that I should believe it, so I can experience it, even though I know in my heart it's real, but I need help. I need a sign, I need something. Please show me something. If you just show me you're with me, I'll continue on this path. I'll keep going no matter what. And if not, I just can't do it anymore. The next day I got a text from my mother, and she sent me a picture of a plant that's in a house that I grew up in. And that plant never grew anything. I didn't even know it grew. I thought it was a fake plant. I thought it was like not real dirt, because there's never a plant that grew out of it, but my mom always kept it in the house. And for like 10 years, I don't know how many years we had it, but I didn't even know it was capable of growing a plant, flower. My mom likes to plant a lot, she gardens a lot, and she loves flowers. So anyway, the next day after I had this very heartfelt prayer to Hashem, and I was crying just to show me that he was with me. The next day I got that text from my mother, and it was a bud that was blooming from that pot. And I just started crying, because of literally what you just said, because the Torah describes that the Jewish life is like that. And not only that, I found out that day that my wife was pregnant with our first son. And it's all worth it in the end. So just
You know what the rabbi. You know, it's interesting. We know Moshe Rabbeinu prayed so much, right? And prayed and prayed and prayed to get the Eretz Israel. And we said that, you know, Hashem told him, please stop praying because enough is enough, you know. And then he stopped praying. We know the energies, the frequencies that of our prayers do not get lost in this universe. They actually, you know, get stored somewhere, right? So isn't it correct or true that just to, you know, tighten what you said, is that those prayers are the hardship, the time for Jewish people now, those are the prayers right now actually helping all Klal Israel to get where they need to get. This is the bank of the prayers.
100%. Rabbi Nachman says there's not one letter that leaves your mouth that's forgotten. There's not one letter that you speak to Hashem that's not precious to Him. There's not one moan or one groan or one tear. There is, he keeps all of it very well. You know, it's interesting. There's a mitzvah that's called the Karat Tov, that you need to be grateful for everything that everybody does for you. In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu, who went to go save us before he did, so he went to go tell his father-in-law that he was leaving Midian to go to Egypt to save his brothers. And why did he stop on the way? Hashem told him, go save your brothers. They've been suffering for over 200 years. And he said, I'm not going to go until my father-in-law gives me permission. So what's the reason that the rabbis explain that he would need to go back, even though there's so many people's lives were at stake? And it was what he was yearning to do his whole life. And the answer is because his father-in-law took him in when he didn't have to. And for Moshe to be grateful to the people who have helped you in your life couldn't go unappreciated. And even the redemption of the Jewish people couldn't take precedence over showing gratitude to that person. In fact, that itself is very redemptive thinking. And we know that the rabbis teach that Hashem keeps His own Torah, meaning that whatever Moshe did, Hashem does the same thing. So if we are required to remember every good thing that people do for us and to be grateful for it, and to really truly appreciate it, not just oh, right, that was very nice and thank you for that and forget about it, but to really meditate on it and to give something back and to thank for it, how much Hashem must remember every single thing that we do for Him to try and be close, to try and overcome our difficulties, to try and remove the skeletons from our closet and to find peace in our life. How much He must keep all of those things and how precious they must be to Him. Just to know nothing gets forgotten. Even though in this world we forget, Hashem doesn't forget anything. And we'll get to see. We're going to get to see. Anybody else? Any of the women here? Do you guys have any questions? There's a question on the bottom. 1 second. I read in the book in Forest Fields that we have to concentrate on one problem that we have and keep praying and begging Hashem for that help in that area. So how can I keep asking for the same thing for the whole hour? It's very hard. It's very hard to do it. I don't do that because that's too hard for me, okay? What I do is I first thank for everything in my life. Because before I thank for all the good things in my life, I can't think clearly. And this is a good practice, that before you ask for anything, you first thank for everything in your life. Also the good, meaning the good that's obvious to you, and even what looks like not good, that my family member is sick, that I am struggling, that this say, not thank you like I'm enjoying this, don't lie, and not that you're suffering, but to say to Hashem, thank you that you believe in me, that you feel that I'm strong enough to go through this, and I hope one day you're going to let me see why. That's a real prayer. That's honest. and just to be honest and to speak to Hashem like he's your best friend. Rabbi Nachman says you shouldn't be speaking to him like he's an authority. You should be speaking to him like he's literally your best friend, and your best friend happens to control the world. So what would you ask him for? What would you tell him? You know, hey, how are you doing today? What's going on for you? What's it like up there running the whole world? Must be pretty hard seeing your kids suffering like this and struggling like this. I can't even imagine how you feel. I could barely get on with my life. And I just have my own problems. You know, you have all of our problems, and we're constantly throwing them on you and crying to you for thousands of years. I can't imagine what that feels like. You know, Rabbi Nachman actually says, it's a very deep thing. It's simple, but it's very deep, and it's something worth thinking about. Rabbi Nachman says that when you cry, when you're talking to Hashem, you should know that you're actually crying Hashem's tears. That when you are crying from frustration or difficulty or challenge in your life of just hitting that wall, like the Viceroy over and over again, and you're doing it to Hashem and you're saying, you know, I can't do this anymore and I need help and I don't know why you're doing this, or you're screaming to Hashem, whatever it is, and you start crying, Rabbi Nachman says that Hashem is actually giving you a window into how Hashem feels. The reason why you're crying is because he's crying. And he's letting you feel that with him. So anyway, there's a lot more to be said. There's a lot more we have to talk with each other about. I would say for me, what's worked, what the Gemara says is how you should pray. And there's a reason for that, is to thank Hashem first for the things in your life. And also to recognize the good points in yourself. No matter what's going on, even if you feel like a complete failure, even if you feel like everything's falling around you, even if you feel like everything is falling around within you. Rabbi Nachman says you should start with Nekuda Tovas, you should start with good points, and to stop judging yourself so harshly. And to say, I'm proud of myself for this. And thank you, Hashem, that I'm able to do this. And even though I don't feel like I'm doing a good job, I know I must be because I'm trying my hardest. You know, whatever is good for you, whatever you feel like is really your good points, to do that. And to start from there, because if you don't do that, you're stuck in all of your problems and you're stuck in all of your confusion and you're stuck in all of your fears, and you're not going to be able to think clearly enough to even pray for what you want or to ask for help because you're too much in pain. So Rabbi Nachman says, first start by saying thank you for everything in your life. Thank you that even though my husband has been sick now for many years, at least I'm married. There's so many people out there that they never found the person, or they're alone, or they did and they passed away and they're not here. You know, at least I found somebody. Or, my children are completely disconnected from me, and I hope my whole life, and I raised them in a way that I hope that they would always be close to me. At least I have children. Thank you for giving me children. There's many people who've been trying their whole life to have children. They don't have any children. And to realize that everything is a free gift. Nothing has to be. And when a person realizes that and realizes that everything in his life, that you have a roof over your head, that's a gift, that you don't have to have that you live in a home, that's a gift, that you don't have to worry about living on the street today. And even though you feel like it's not because you think you worked for it, what makes you any different than that homeless person who's living on the street? You think because you worked harder than him? You just didn't grow up in his family. You weren't disowned by your parents. And you weren't giving no support, and you weren't giving no resources. And therefore you ended up on the street, and you ended up in your apartment or in your home. To know that everything is a free gift is the beginning of seeing clearly in your life and being able to pray to Hashem for the things that you need. So my suggestion to everyone here is to first thank for everything in your life, no matter what. You know, I had a rough day. I had a very, very rough day. And the first thing I did when I laid down, I said to Hashem, thank you for giving me such a hard day. Because even though it was so hard, and even though I'm emotionally spent, and even though I'm confused, I know everything you do is for the best. And I know how much you believe in me, and you would never put me through this unless you think that something good is going to come out of this. And what's good is this class. That's what came out of this. You know, it said that why did David have to suffer his whole life? Why would Hashem do that to his child his name is David? It means beloved. It actually comes from the word dod, which means uncle. And they explain that an uncle's love for his nephew is pure unconditional love because he doesn't have to take care of him and he just gets to appreciate him. And that's called beloved, to be beloved. And David's name means to be beloved. Who is he beloved to? Because David, his whole life, isn't beloved by anybody. Except ultimately, like, for the people that he helped, but he isn't beloved by anybody. He actually has many, many enemies and many people who are trying constantly to bring him down and think he has bad intentions and he's trying to do things that he's not, and he really just has good intentions. He's really just trying to help. Who is he beloved to? And the answer is he's beloved to Hashem. If you notice the word Dodi, the word Dodi is actually my David, my beloved. So Hashem is speaking about David. Every Jew, you're beloved to me. So the question is, why did he have to suffer so much then? And the answer is so he can write the book called Tehillim. So that he could pour his heart out from all of his difficulties and trials and tribulations, because that was going to be the only thing that would get the Jewish people through thousands of years of exile and holocausts and inquisitions and suffering, is those simple Jewish women who are reading Tehillim every day and crying their heart out. And that's the only reason we're saved in the end. Because David wrote that book. How did David get to write that book? Because he went through all of that. And
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Question.
Yes.
So we know it's Anilo Dodi Vedodili, but isn't it that we know for a person, this was the tikkun that we're doing to appreciate the tikkun of Adam Arishon. That was the original sin of not appreciating. So this is how we could connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by mitaken the tikkun of Adam Arishon, because that was the original sin. Yeah.
Yes, that was the original issue. And my rabbi who passed away is Neshama should have an aliyah. He spoke about this more than anything. And I actually learned how to be grateful from him. Even though I learned from Rabbi Nachman what it sounds like, I actually got to see from him what it looks like. And he was grateful for everything. Wow, it was crazy. Literally everything. Every day he came over to the person who got him celery. That was all he would eat during the day, because he didn't want to eat and take time away from trying to help people and trying to teach and praying. And so he just ate celery during the day. And whenever got him the celery, at the end of the day, he would tell him, "Thank you so much. You don't know how much you mean to me, and I appreciate you so much that you got me the celery." Everybody was like, "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything for you." And he used to tell me, to be Jewish means to be thankful for everything. The word Jewish actually comes from the word Yehuda, which we're called Yehudi. Like when we were in the Holocaust, we had a star that was strapped onto our shirts, or onto our vests, and it said Yehudi on it. And what does it mean? It comes from the word hod, or hodu, to be thankful, to be grateful, to appreciate, to recognize. That's what we're called. We're called grateful, thankful people. That's what makes us Jewish. So I would start by saying thank you for everything. And then I would talk about the things that you're struggling with and ask for help. And don't give up on what you're praying for. And like the Rav Levi, I believe his name is, who came on, has been asking beautiful questions. So every prayer makes its mark. Rabbi Nachman says every single word that leaves your mouth makes a huge impression on all of existence. And even though you don't see it, it's just because there's a building that's being built through those prayers. Many people don't realize that the Beit HaMikdash that we're all waiting for, that we know that the last time we had peace in the world was when there was this building, which we don't have it now, and we've been praying for thousands of years to have back. How is it built? So the Rambam says we're going to build it. We're going to physically go and build it. And Rashi says Hashem's going to build it. So Rabbi Nachman says it's both. That Hashem's going to build it with your prayers. Meaning every single time that you pray for anything from your heart, you're actually creating another brick in that building, or planting another flower in that field, and you don't even know that field exists. And everybody is planting those flowers in that field and doesn't even know they're doing it every single time that they pray to Hashem and talk to Him and tell Him about what's going on in their life. When they speak to Him like He's their best friend. And every single word is making another flower in that field, another brick in that building. And on Shavuot, tomorrow night, we get a chance to see that we built a whole entire field of flowers, and we built a whole entire building of bricks, and that the Torah that Moshe is going to bring down to us, that Mashiach is going to bring us, is actually all of our prayers. So
can we say in this shiur, "Ve'achavta lerecha kamocha," love your neighbor like yourself, and by us in Shavuot, not only praying for ourselves, but once we pray for others, so Hashem could make it midah kanegid midah for us, because midah kanegid midah comes from Hashem to people,
right.
not from people to people. So
right.
once you pray for others, so Hashem will answer your prayers.
100%. The Gemara says very clearly that the person who prays for another person, he gets answered with that thing. And the reason is not because it's like a trick. It's not a game. It's not like, okay, let me pray for this person so I get it. But it's because you actually care more about that person and their sorrows than your own. If you can get yourself to that point that you could truthfully pray for a person in that way, you get it first because that's the whole purpose of your being created, to get to a point that you're so selfless, that you get to a point that you care so much about people and you care so much about creation that you're willing to spend time praying for them even though they don't even know about it, and to pour your heart out for that person or for that thing. And Hashem gives it to you. And you should know that Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutei Moharan, what does it mean the whole world is created for? The rabbis say that whoever's listening to this class, the Torah teaches that the whole world and everything in it from the beginning of the end was created just for you. So that's a very beautiful and very powerful statement, and it's hard to understand what that even means. So Rabbi Nachman says it means that it's created for you. That means that you're responsible for it. That's what it means it was created for you, that you're responsible for it. So that sounds like a lot. How can you be responsible for the whole world and everything that goes on in it? So Rabbi Nachman says you're responsible to pray for whatever you see is lacking in the world. If you see a person suffering, you can't just walk by and forget about it. You have to go home and you have to pray for that person. If you see that a family member is suffering, you can't just forget about it or just chalk it up to this is going to get figured out. Rabbi Nachman says if you see anybody or anything that's lacking in the world, it's your job. Hashem created the whole world just so you can pray for that lacking and to fill those lackings and to plant those flowers. So with this, we're going to end.
I have a question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. That always happens. Whenever I'm going to end.
I know. I'm sorry. Okay, you're talking about reading the Tehillim, right? In the past, I used to read in English, and it really would touch me. I would be in tears and stuff. I'd understand, and I would relate to what I was going through that one chapter that I would pick, just like your lectures. It's unbelievable. Thank you so much for your time. So last year, I self-taught how to read Hebrew. Thank God, and I started to read more and more, and I'm better and faster, but I don't understand what I read. So when I read the Tehillim, I don't connect as much with it. Would I rather read it in English and understand it, or keep it in Hebrew and just read it?
Good question. So the Shulchan Aruch, which is literally how to live your life according to the Torah, says very explicitly there, and this is a law, this isn't just a piece of advice, that it's better to say a little bit and mean it than to say a lot and not to mean it. So best thing to do is to mean what you say. And you should also try and learn Hebrew. You should continue to try and learn, because if you could say it in the Hebrew, all the better. But the main thing is that you mean what you say. And these women that have been praying for thousands of years, saying Tehillim and crying over it and keeping us going, they knew what they were saying. You know, we are the first generation that doesn't know what it says, and we're still trying, and that's so beautiful. I remember I was working at a place called Ohel in Brooklyn. It's it's a mental health facility. They work with people who have different disabilities. And I remember it was like in the beginning of my Bali Tshuva process. And I was there and I was praying they have a minyan. And it was the first time I ever prayed with like a minyan of people at work, which was awesome. But I remember they all finished in like 5 minutes, and I was sitting there for like a half an hour just trying to finish the Amidah. And I was doing that for like a year. It literally only takes 5 minutes to say, but it was taking me like a half an hour, 45 minutes to say every single word. And I remember a person came up to me at the end, and he told me, David, you should know, it's people like you who are going to bring Mashiach in the end. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I can barely read what I'm writing. I don't even know what I'm saying. He said, the fact that you are breaking your teeth to say these words that you don't understand every day so you can try and do whatever you think Hashem wants you to do is unbelievable. And you have a whole generation of people who are doing that now. And he told me, I really believe this, that Mashiach is going to come in the merit of those people like you that are just breaking your teeth and just trying to muster whatever you can to figure out a way. Rav Shalom Arush says that the greatest Yetzer Hara of our generation is that we don't believe what we're doing is good, that we don't believe that what we're doing is so precious and so valuable. We don't understand how precious this is. 2,000 years ago, they heard from their father or their mother, who heard from their mother, or heard from their father, who heard from Moshe, that this is what Hashem wants from you. Okay, so that's great. So now you just go do it and you live a good life. We've been thousands of years since then. And our parents didn't get to hear it because their parents just barely survived the camps, or they were sent into exile in the Inquisition. They don't know. And you are literally starting from nothing and running after something, and you don't know where it is. You don't know how to get there. And it's just so precious to Hashem. You don't know. You don't know. So I would say like this. Make sure you don't lose out on saying it in the way that you understand it, because that is what Hashem wants. He wants you to mean what you said, because he only cares about the truth. Now, obviously, if in the future you have the merit or the time or the willpower to learn Hebrew so you can mean it in Hebrew, all the better. So I would suggest, if the English means something to you, and you haven't yet got to the point of the Hebrew meaning something to you, you definitely should read it in English. And Hashem should open up your heart just like it's been, and give you courage and strength and to keep working, maybe learn a word a day. Or
thank you. Yeah, I'll try.
I do this as well. I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm like, no, I got to learn the Hebrew, and I'm just saying the Hebrew. I have no idea what I'm saying, and then I'm struggling in my life, and all of a sudden I just I can't take it. So I go back to the English, and I just start crying, and I realize what I was missing, and then I go back. And so, Rav Nachman speaks about a Yetzer Hara clothed in a mitzvah, and for Bali Tshuva, this is our whole life. We're just doing things that Hashem doesn't want us to do because we think it's what He wants us to do. And we don't have any guidance. We have no idea, we don't have anyone who can just tell us, So Hashem should help all of us, and hopefully, whatever I can give you from my experience, my few years of going down this journey and breaking my teeth and my head and my eyes and my ears and my nose and my heart, and just to try and give over the best of what I can. And I'll just tell you, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that it's better to say a little bit and mean it than to say a lot and not to. So you have
Rabbi, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I posted a private question to you. I don't know if you have time to answer,
sorry,
or maybe next time.
No.
Next time it's fine.
We have 5 more minutes. I'm gonna look.
Okay.
What if I'm failing even more and discovering more and more with this personal prayer that I'm lacking so much? Oh, wow. Is that you? I'm not going to say your name, but I need to know if that's you because I want to answer the right question.
Yes, that's me.
Okay. So you and me both. We're in the same boat. This is actually part of Hibodadu. is realizing what you have in a way you didn't realize before, and also realizing what you don't have in a way you didn't realize before. Because what Hashem wants from us is to make space for Him. What happens in life is when you have a million things going on in your life, you're trying to be a wife, you're trying to be a mother, you're trying to be a boss or a worker, you're trying to be a friend, you're trying to be a family member, you're trying to do so many different things. So you don't have time to need anything or to have space to need anything because you're busy doing everything. Part of that personal time that you have every day, that hour that you talk to Hashem, you're making space for Him in your life. Rav Nachman says, even if you go there and you can't say a word, even that is so precious to Hashem because you made space for Him in your life. And He wants to hear from you. And it's okay to feel lacking from that. But know the difference, because this is a very, very important point. There's a very big difference from a broken heart and from being depressed. The Torah says it's very good to have a broken heart. But Rabbi Nachman says the worst thing that you can do to yourself is allow yourself to get depressed. Because it's not holy. It's not what Hashem wants. Hashem never wants His children to be depressed at all. He wants you to be happy. So what is the difference between a broken heart and being depressed? A broken heart comes from faith. A broken heart comes from yearning for something better in your life. A broken heart comes from yearning for things that you don't have, that you want to have, that you know would be good for you. You don't have them, but you want them. That's a broken heart. But depression comes from despair. And despair comes from not believing things can get better or will get better. And there's no place for that in life. I have lived like that my whole life. And it caused me to get electric shock therapy, and to be in a psych ward, and to be on countless medications, and to see literally tens and tens of psychiatrists and therapists my whole life. There is no place for despair. Rav Nachman said it doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist. So if you're feeling despair, like my mom used to do to me, go get some cold water and pour it on your face. Scream. There's no such thing as despair in the world. There's no such thing as despair in the world. There's no such thing. And if things are not working out, it's not because they can't work out or they won't work out. It's because they're not right now. But to hope and to believe that they will, because that's the only thing that's real. There's no such thing as despair in the world. It doesn't exist. When you are doing your hibodedut, don't do hibodedut from despair. Do it from a broken heart. As time goes on, we'll be able to try and work through and to teach what the difference is. It's such an important difference. But a simple sign is if your tears are coming from despair, meaning thinking that this is never going to get better and I'm stuck and I'm done, that's not what Hashem wants. That's not what He's looking for, and that's actually going to take you away from everything that's good in your life. He likes a broken heart, meaning He likes a person who comes to Him and says, I'm lacking a lot in my life, but I hope and I pray that you can give me those things because I believe that I need help. I need help. That's a broken heart. And you're going to see that those prayers are answered eventually. However, Rabbi Nachman says the more precious, the more beautiful, the more important thing that you want is that you're praying for, the more you have to pray for that thing. Because to the degree that you desire something that's good, to that degree you need to want that thing that's good. And the only thing that increases your want for that thing is to ask for it. Like for instance, let's say you want to get married, you're not married yet. So, and you want so desperately as a girl, you want to get married, your whole life you wanted to get married, and you don't know why. You're 30 years old or 35 years old and you're still not there yet. What's wrong with me? I'm a good person, and like, you know, I have so much to offer and I want that so bad. And the Torah says, it's great to get married. So how can it be that Hashem wants me to get married, I want to get married, and I'm not married? And the answer is Because the person you're going to marry and the experience that you're going to have when you get married is the most beautiful thing. And it's the most precious thing. And because it's so precious, Hashem wants you to want it as good as it is, as good as it's going to be. Why is Hashem doing that? Because He wants you to enjoy it when you get it. You know, a person who grows up poor and he ends up succeeding in his life, he is so much happier and he feels so much more joy and preciousness from that than a person who grew up having everything. It's a fact. So for us, when we're struggling for something, part of the reason Hashem is causing us to go through times that we don't have it, even though we know He wants it for us, and even though we want it for us, is because He wants so badly to give it to you, but because what He's going to give to you is so good, He wants it to be so sweet for you. And the only way it's going to be sweet for you is to increase your will for that thing through your prayers. And the more that you speak to Him about the thing that you want, the more you're going to want that thing. And the more you're going to want that thing, then when you finally get it, the sweeter it's really going to be. We have many examples of this in the Torah, especially from Jewish women, that they prayed for children. They couldn't have children. They were barren. And Hashem didn't give them children their whole life. And these were the mothers of the Jewish people. This was Sarah. This was Rivka, Rebecca. This was Rachel. This was Rachel. Why are they all struggling to have kids if the whole reason they came into this world is to have children? And we know that Hashem wants them to have children. So why can't they have children? And they're praying every day to have children. So why doesn't Hashem give them children? And the answer is because they're giving birth to Yitzchak, to Isaac. And they're giving birth to Yaakov, to Jacob. They're giving birth to the greatest children, the most important people who would ever live. And therefore, Hashem wanted that for Sarah, it would be the sweetest thing in the world when she saw Yitzchak after living her whole life without being able to have a child with her husband. And finally, in her old age, having Yitzchak. Why did she name him Yitzchak? It means that she laughed. The name Yitzchak means to laugh. Sarah just couldn't believe. She was so happy that she had a child, and she couldn't believe it after 90 years of praying for it, that she was just so happy she named her kid Laughter. And how much Sarah got to appreciate Yitzchak, Isaac, and how important he ended up being in the whole spectrum of history, that he was the father of Jacob, of Yaakov Avinu, who gave birth to the Jewish people. And we're only existing because of him. So this is the main thing that we should come away with, okay? That if you want something, and you know that the Torah says Hashem wants it also, and you're praying for it, the reason Rabbi Nachman says you haven't gotten it yet is not because Hashem doesn't want it for you. It's not because you should stop praying for it. It's because Hashem wants you to really enjoy it when you get it. And the way to really enjoy it is to create a vessel for that, to create a will for that. And the way that you do that is by constantly asking for it and talking to Hashem about it. So everybody have an amazing Shavuot. Tomorrow night, please, I'm begging you, just be happy. Be happy with yourself. Know that Hashem is happy with you. Know that He sees what you're going through. And not just that He sees, He's suffering with you. He's crying with you. Your tears are His tears. And therefore, just know that no matter what you're doing the best that you can. And to be so happy with that. To stop working tomorrow, to stop toiling tomorrow, stop trying to figure things out tomorrow. Just be happy. Happy with what you have. And with this, you'll finally, for the first time, get to be able to experience the lost princess. Because Rabbi Nachman says there's no way to experience Hashem or His Torah if you're not happy. Because if you're not happy, then you can't think clearly. And if you can't think clearly, you can't see Hashem in your life. Everybody have a beautiful, amazing Shavuot. And Bezrat Hashem, Sunday night, we're going to have a man and woman's class together. And these past few weeks, we've been doing the weeks of Shavuot HaOmer. So Bezrat Hashem should give me an idea of what we should all talk about. But until then, again, don't worry about anything and just be happy, okay? Everybody have a great
Thank
Shabbat.
you.
You're welcome.